A haze of scorched alloy and alien ichor clung to the battered cell where Marcus Hale sat, his back pressed against the vibrating force bars. Their electric hum gnawed at his nerves, a ceaseless reminder that hope here was a thin, flickering thing. His boots were caked with dust and dried blood, some human, most not. He stared out, shoulders aching, through the shimmering field at the Virenth encampment, the flicker of firelight on patchwork armor, the rippling movement of jade-green warriors with windswept purple hair, darting like shadows between the scarred hulls of shattered war machines and the leathery tents sewn from monstrous hides. He watched them with the silent study of a man who had survived only by listening. The Virenth moved with a restless energy, their slender bodies coiling and uncoiling, always alert, always dangerous. At the heart of the camp stood their chieftain, Lyri, her golden eyes cutting through the dusk, her posture regal and untouchable. The camp deferred to her with a reverence Marcus could not mistake. Yet as she knelt beside her daughter, Sira, her fingers smoothing tangled hair, something fragile flickered in her gaze, a private sorrow Marcus had glimpsed in stolen moments. Once he had overheard a pair of guards outside his cell, voices pitched in a harsh, urgent whisper. "Our chieftain swore on her mate's soul stone," one spat, his words sharp and fearful. "She will not rest until every last human is driven from our world," the other replied, as if saying it aloud gave the oath weight. Marcus pressed his forehead to the bars, staring at the soulstone Lyri wore, a dull gray crystal at her throat, pulsing with an inner light. It was a symbol of vengeance and grief, and it terrified him more than her blade ever had. For 4 cycles he had been the only human prisoner. 4 cycles of counting the bruises on his ribs, tracing the lines of the scars on his hands, and wondering if rescue or execution would come first. A sudden shriek of alarms shattered the uneasy calm. The electric hum was drowned out by a klaxon wail. Virenth warriors froze mid-motion, and in the next heartbeat, chaos erupted. Lyre spun, her pointed ears twitching, eyes narrowing as she assessed the threat. She drew her blade, a jagged length of black crystal, its edge catching the firelight with a sinister gleam, and barked orders in their melodic, brutal tongue. Warriors surged to form a defensive ring, their armor clattering. Outside the cell, Marcus caught glimpses of the rival clan, armored figures swarming, plasma rifles spitting white-hot death into the encampment. Plasma fire lit the dusk, turning shadows into sharp relief. The ground shook as explosions ripped through the camp. Marcus flinched as a blast slammed into the side of his cell, shattering the lock mechanism and showering him with hot shards of alloy. He ducked instinctively, heart pounding, the scent of burning ozone filling his lungs. Through the cacophony, a scream rose above the rest, a child's scream. Marcus twisted, straining to see. Sira lay pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her small frame twisted, blood staining the dust beneath her. Lyri's cry was raw anguish, her composure fracturing as she shoved past her warriors, slicing a path through smoke and rubble. 2 Virenth fighters heaved at the beam, veins bulging, but Sira's leg was mangled, her side pulsing blood with every labored breath. The healer rushed in, chanting feverishly, hands glowing with pale green light, but the wound gushed, heedless of her power. Lyri knelt, horror etched deep in the lines of her face. For the first time, Marcus saw a leader stripped bare, just a mother, desperate, helpless. Adrenaline surged through him. He rammed his shoulder against the corroded cell door, ignoring the searing pain as metal tore at his flesh. Once, twice, then with a scream of torn alloy, the lock gave way. Guards spun, shouts rising, but Marcus ignored them, stumbling out into the chaos, blinded by firelight and grit. He fell beside Sira, hands moving without thought. Her eyes fluttered, skin gray and clammy. Lyre was on him in an instant, her blade pressed to his throat, the black edge biting skin, drawing a trickle of blood. "Touch her, and you die," she snarled, voice trembling with grief and fury. "She's dying," Marcus gasped, feeling the razor edge at his pulse. "Your healer can't save her. I can. Let me try." Lyri's breath hitched. The healer shrieked, "He will bring contamination! Her soul!" Lyri's grip faltered. "Enough!" she barked, but her voice was ragged. She stared at Marcus, weighing vengeance against the slim hope in his voice. Marcus locked eyes with her, willing her to see the truth. "Let me save her," he said, voice low. "Or let her die. Your choice." A heartbeat passed, then another. At last, Lyra lowered her blade, grabbed Syrah in her arms, and dragged both child and prisoner through smoke and debris into her tent. She flung the flap closed, ordering guards to stand watch. "If she dies, you die slowly," she whispered, voice vibrating with threat and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperate hope. Marcus barked orders. Water, cloth, anything sharp, a blade, a needle. The healer spat curses, eyes wild with horror, but a young warrior obeyed Lyri's nod and scrambled for supplies. Marcus worked quickly, hands steady despite the ache in his chest and the blood on his own neck. He cut away Syrah's tunic, pressed cloth to the worst of the bleeding, searched for the source of the damage. The wound was deep, the flesh around it purple and hot, blood pulsing with every beat of the girl's heart. "She needs blood," he said, voice taut. "She's lost too much. If she doesn't get more—" He didn't finish. The healer screamed about blasphemy, about the mixing of souls. "Her body will be corrupted. She will not cross into the next world." "She'll never cross anywhere if she dies now," Marcus snapped, meeting Lyri's gaze. "My blood is O-negative. It's her only chance." The tent fell silent, the only sound Syrah's ragged breathing. Garen, a burly warrior with scars down one cheek, burst in. "Enough of this! Kill him! It's a trick!" "Quiet," Lyri commanded, her voice cold as winter. She looked at her daughter, at the life slipping away by inches. At last, she nodded once. Marcus set to work, drawing his own blood with trembling hands, improvising a crude transfusion. The warriors watched in horror, some turning away, others muttering prayers. The healer hissed curses, but did not interfere. Minutes stretched into eternity. Marcus's vision swam with exhaustion, his skin slick with sweat. He forced himself to focus, watching Syrah's face for signs of change. Slowly, her lips pinked, her breathing eased. Her eyelids fluttered open, just for a moment, and Marcus felt the tension in the tent ease, replaced by stunned disbelief. He slumped back, dizzy, as Lyri moved to his side. She took a damp cloth, her movements gentle despite the dried blood on her hands, and pressed it to the cut on his neck where her blade had bitten. Her touch was unexpectedly careful, her calloused fingers tracing the wound as she cleaned away the blood. Their knees brushed. Marcus looked up, meeting her eyes. Golden, fierce, and for a heartbeat, vulnerable. She held his gaze, her fingers lingering just a moment too long. "You will stay here," she murmured, voice low and steady, "and watch over her." She called to the guards, her tone brooking no argument. Marcus nodded, leaning back, heart hammering as the reality of his new captivity settled over him. His cell was gone, replaced by a prison woven from blood, debt, and a dangerous, undeniable attraction. 3 days later, Syrah woke. Her golden eyes, so like her mother's, blinked with a lucidity that stunned the tent into silence. For a moment, she simply stared upward, lashes trembling, and then her gaze drifted to the splint on her leg. She touched it with a gentle curiosity, prodding the woven bark and cloth as if it belonged to someone else. Lyra was at her side in an instant, hands hovering between fear and hope. "Syrah," she whispered, voice raw, "can you hear me?" Syrah nodded, tentative, lips cracking in a small smile. "Mother?" Leary choked on a sob and swept her daughter into her arms, cradling her as if she were made of crystal. The healer, face drawn and eyes suspicious, stepped forward, unwinding the bandage from Syrah's side with trembling fingers. As the last of the cloth fell away, she gasped. The wound, only days before a gaping, bloody ruin, was now nothing but a faint pink line, smooth as newborn skin. The healer pressed a crystal amulet to Syrah's chest, chanting under her breath. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the crystal flared, a sickly, unnatural green. The healer recoiled as if burned. "Her spirit is corrupted," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "The human has tainted her." All eyes turned to Marcus. He stood at the edge of the tent, wrists shackled, shadows pooling beneath his eyes. The moment the accusation left the healer's mouth, Leary spun on him, her blade drawn in a flash of black crystal. She moved with a predator's grace, the tip of her weapon pressed against his sternum. Marcus lifted his hands in surrender, chains clinking. "It's not a curse," he said, voice rough from exhaustion and disuse. "Nanites, in my blood, medical technology, tiny machines invisible to the eye. They repair tissue, speed healing. When I gave her a transfusion, they must have bonded with her." Leary's face twisted, horror mingling with disbelief. "You made her part human?" Her voice cracked, and for an instant, Marcus saw the agony behind the fury, the terror of a mother who realized her daughter was now a living violation of their oldest law. "It was the only way to save her," Marcus said quietly. "They'll keep her alive, but they're part of her now. I'm sorry." The healer spat, voice shrill. "She is unclean. The oath—" Leary silenced her with a single look, but the blade did not leave Marcus's chest. Her oath had always been simple: to drive the humans from their world, to avenge her mate. Now that oath twisted cruelly, her child's life entwined with the blood of her sworn enemy. The news spread through the camp like wildfire, feeding on centuries of suspicion and ancient wounds. Garen seized his chance, storming through the encampment, his voice a thunderclap above the council fire. Warriors gathered, faces painted for war, eyes bright with anger. "She let a human defile our bloodline," Garen roared, arms spread wide, the flames casting his shadow tall and monstrous. "This child is no longer Virinth. She is a vessel for parasites, a symbol of our weakness. The human must die. The child must be purified by fire." A chorus of angry voices answered him, swelling with fear and righteous fury. Syrah, frail and frightened, clung to her mother's side as the warriors encircled them. Marcus stood at Leary's back, shackled but unbowed, his presence a living provocation. Leary faced her people, shoulders squared, jaw clenched. "He saved my daughter," she said, voice low and fierce, barely audible over the din. "While you prayed and pleaded with spirits, he acted. He risked his life, gave his blood." Garen cut her off, snarling. "He infected her. He made her less than Virinth. Are we to let our bloodlines be diluted by invaders and their poisons?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some hostile, others uncertain. Garen's eyes glittered with triumph, sensing the council wavering, their grief and suspicion fueling his crusade. "Enough!" Leary's voice cracked like a whip. "You want to punish the one who saved her? Then you damn yourselves. If you want my child's life, you'll have to take mine as well." Syrah whimpered, hiding her face in her mother's tunic. The council fell silent, the fire crackling in the hush, every eye shifting between Leary and Garen, torn between fear and loyalty, grief and hate. As night fell, the tension did not break. Marcus was thrown into a small tent at the edge of the camp, his shackles clamped tight. 2 guards posted outside, no longer Leary's loyalists, but Garen's men, stone-faced and silent. He sat with his back to the tent pole, listening to the distant arguments, the shouts, the crackle of torches as the night deepened. The air was thick with smoke and foreboding. He flexed his wrists, feeling the bite of cold metal, mind racing for a way out, a way forward. The flap rustled. Leary slipped inside, her movements quick and wary. In her hand gleamed a narrow blade, its edge razor-sharp. "The guards," Marcus murmured. "They answer to Garen now," Larry whispered, voice low. "He'll strike at dawn. He'll come for you and for Syrah. We can't wait." She tossed the blade to Marcus, who caught it with practiced reflexes. He looked up at her, hope flaring in his chest for the first time in days. "For your chains?" he asked. She nodded, golden eyes fierce. "We run. You, me, and Syrah. I've hidden supplies at the western ridge. We'll move before the moon sets." Marcus set to work on the shackles, teeth gritted as he worked the blade into the lock. "What's the plan once we're out?" he whispered. "We head for the ravines. The old tunnels," Larry replied. "If we can lose them in the wilds, we'll have a chance." A beat of silence, heavy with unspoken fears. "You trust me?" Marcus asked, voice soft. "I have no choice," she said. She glanced at the tent flap, then back at him. "And neither do you." Their eyes met. Something shifted, no longer captor and captive, not quite friends, but something more urgent and dangerous. Allies, bound by a child and by blood. The look they shared was a pact, and it thrummed with the promise of more. Before dawn, the camp erupted. Garen's warriors surged through the shadows, blades and plasma rifles drawn. Smoke curled above the tents, shouts echoing as the first torches were hurled. Leary tore through the darkness, Syrah clutched to her chest, Marcus at her heels, chain dangling from one wrist. The world shrank to fire, fear, and survival. Leary moved with lethal grace, cutting down foes with a snarl. Marcus spun the broken length of chain as a flail, swinging it into the face of a warrior who blocked their path. Syrah sobbed into Leary's tunic as plasma bolts stitched the ground beside them. They fought side by side, Marcus driving back Garen's men with brutal efficiency, Leary's blade flashing in the half-light. Their movements were a dance of necessity and trust, her agility and his tactics making them a force the Virenth had not expected. They reached the ravine's edge as the horizon paled with the coming sun. The air was thick with smoke and the howls of their pursuers. Marcus scooped Syrah into his arms. She was light, too light, but alive. They scrambled up a steep embankment, rocks skittering beneath their feet. Garen appeared above, silhouetted against the dawn, face twisted with fury. He hurled rocks down the slope, forcing them to duck and scramble. Marcus, still shackled, slipped, his boot catching on loose shale. For a heartbeat he dangled above the drop, Syrah's arms tight around his neck. Leary seized his arm, hauling him up with a grunt of effort, strength and desperation lending her power. Garen bellowed, rallying his warriors, but Leary and Marcus, battered and breathless, crested the ravine and vanished into the wilds. Fugitives now, bound by blood and necessity, running for their lives and for something neither yet dared name. They found shelter in a cave hidden behind a curtain of glowing moss, its bioluminescent filaments veiling the entrance in an eerie emerald haze. Inside, the air was cold and damp, every surface slick with condensation. But it was safe. No sign of pursuit, only the distant hush of rain and the rumble of thunder echoing from the ravine behind them. Leary moved first, scanning the walls with a warrior's vigilance before crouching by a ring of stones. Her fingers worked methodically as she built a fire, coaxing stubborn sparks from a piece of quartz and an old blade. Marcus knelt at the cave's edge, the chain still hanging from one wrist, tending to Syrah. She sat quietly between them, her legs stretched out, the pink scar on her thigh nearly vanished. When Marcus touched her forehead, he felt only the coolness of sleep and the gentle rhythmic rise and fall of her breath. Leary watched as Marcus checked Syrah's pulse, his movements efficient, gentle. He unpacked a battered kit, pulling out antiseptic, makeshift bandages, a needle and thread for the gash across his own arm. Leary's gaze lingered on his hands, scarred, steady, stained with a dozen battles but tender now, as if he believed, against all evidence, in healing. Syrah smiled sleepily, curling closer to the warmth of the fire. Her eyes, once hollow with pain, gleamed with vitality that was more than Virenth, more than human, something new, impossible, and alive. Marcus met Lyra's gaze over the child's head. For a moment, gratitude warred with memory, and they said nothing. Nights were the hardest. The cave was a cathedral of shadows, the cold pressing in with silent persistence. As the fire died down, Marcus and Lyra found themselves edged closer by necessity, their bodies angled toward the heat. On the first night, silence held. On the second, Syrah whimpered in her sleep, and Lyra shushed her with soft words in the old tongue, brushing her hair back, her voice the only comfort that seemed to reach across the gulf of fear. On the third night, the storm outside was relentless, rain lashing the stone, wind howling down the ravine like an ancient beast. Lightning flickered beyond the moss curtain, painting their faces in silver and green. The fire sputtered, shadows leaping against the cave walls. Syrah, nestled in a cocoon of cloaks, slept uneasily, her breath punctuated by small, frightened sounds. Marcus stared into the flames, eyes distant. Lyra sat across from him, arms wrapped around her knees. The silence between them was a living thing, filled with everything unsaid. "Why did you become a medic?" Lyra asked softly, breaking the stillness. Her voice carried a tentative curiosity, something raw and uncertain. Marcus glanced at her, then back at the flames. He drew a slow breath, the words thick in his chest. "My family died on a colony," he began. "Virenth raiders. At least that's what the report said. I enlisted for revenge. I wanted to kill the monsters who took them from me." He shook his head, staring at the embers. "But at the front, it wasn't monsters. It was people. Scared, desperate, fighting for their homes. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make more ghosts." Lyra watched him, the lines of her face softening. "Your family," she prompted gently. He swallowed, throat tight. "My wife, Mara. Our son, Eli. They were everything. Gone in a breath. After that, all I had was hate. But hate didn't fill the emptiness. Healing. It was all I could do after that." The fire popped, scattering sparks across the stone. Lyra shifted, drawing her cloak tighter. Her golden eyes shone, luminous in the half-light. "I lost my mate, Kael," she said quietly. "But not to soldiers. Mercenaries, wearing human armor, raided our village. Kael tried to protect Syrah. They killed him. When we found the bodies, I thought it was your people. I took the oath. Vengeance was all I had left." She looked down, fingers tracing the hilt of her blade. "I taught Syrah to hate too. I thought it would keep her safe." Marcus shook his head, voice rough. "You were wrong. So was I." A brittle laugh escaped Lyra, more sorrow than mirth. "Our pain is the same, only the uniforms changed." Outside, the storm raged, wind screeching as rain battered the moss and stone. Inside the cave, something shifted, 2 stories, 2 wounds, woven together by the bitter thread of loss. Syrah whimpered in her sleep, kicking at the tangled cloak. Marcus leaned over, voice dropping to a gentle murmur. "Easy, Syrah. You're safe." "We're right here." He brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead, his touch patient and warm. Syrah calmed, curling into the crook of his arm, breath evening out. Lyra watched him, heart pounding with an emotion she could not name. This man, her enemy, soothed her child as if she were his own. She searched his face, finding not threat, but compassion. And something inside her, a hard, ancient certainty, began to unravel. Their eyes met across the fire. The world outside was vast and hostile, but here, in the small circle of light, the distance between them narrowed with each heartbeat. Lyra's breath caught. She remembered the feel of Marcus's hands, The warmth of his blood mingled with her daughter's, the way he had looked at her in the tent, defiant, wounded, and alive. She moved first, drawn by a force older than reason or law. She reached across the fire, fingertips brushing Marcus's jaw. He did not flinch. Instead, he leaned into her touch, closing his eyes, his hand rising to cover hers. Their skin met, warm and trembling, a wordless promise blooming in the space between. The kiss was fierce and aching, a collision of broken vows, of grief and longing, hope and fear. Leary's lips tasted of rain and ashes, Marcus's of salt and longing. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the clan hunting them, not the blood on their hands, not the past or the future. There was only the fire, the storm, and the fragile, impossible thing taking root in their hearts. They surrendered, there in the darkness, to the bond forged in blood, fear, and forbidden longing. The cave seemed to breathe with them, sheltering their sorrow and their hope, as the storm battered the world outside and the fire burned low. Their refuge was an abandoned relay station, half sunken into a hillside of wiry grass and shattered stone, its skeletal antennae reaching toward the bruised dusk. Marcus pried open the battered hatch, heart thumping, and ushered Lyrae and Sira inside. The air was stale, tinged with old ozone and the metallic tang of lost transmissions. Sira wrinkled her nose, but said nothing, her small hand locked in her mother's. The main console still blinked with intermittent life, a stubborn spark in the darkness. Marcus knelt, rolling up his sleeves, both medic and soldier now. He coaxed a panel open, fingers dancing over frayed wires, patching a power cell from his kit into the ancient grid. The console shivered, screens flickering, lines of code unfurling in a language both familiar and foreign. Lyrae hovered at his side, silent, while Sira watched wide-eyed from a makeshift seat atop an old storage crate. Rain drummed on the metal roof, muffling the world beyond. "Give me a minute," Marcus murmured, eyes locked on the scrolling text. He bypassed a burnt relay, spliced a fiber line, and the machine responded, shedding dust and silence as encrypted logs crawled across the display. He sliced through firewalls and ciphers, a soldier's discipline guiding a healer's hands. The logs were fragmentary, but as he delved deeper, a pattern emerged. One entry, marked by a timestamp that sent a shudder through his chest, the day Kyle died. He opened the file. The audio crackled, warped by age, mercenary chatter, harsh voices punctuated by weapons fire. Blackstar package secured. Repeat, package secured. Payment confirmed. Redirect to Garen. No coalition signatures detected. Repeat, this was a Blackstar Syndicate operation. Client remains anonymous. Marcus's breath caught. He glanced at Lyrae, who stood motionless, lips parted in shock. "It wasn't the coalition," he said, voice low. "Blackstar mercenaries. Someone paid them. Someone who wanted your mate dead. The payment went to Garen. The weapons, too." Lyrae's face crumpled, the old certainty shattering. "My oath, my vengeance was for nothing." Her voice was barely a whisper. "All this pain, built on a lie. Garen, he was behind it all." Marcus reached for her hand, but she pulled away, eyes blazing with grief and fury. "The true enemy was never your people, Marcus. It was those who profit from endless war, who thrive on our hate." Sira clung to her mother's cloak, frightened by the rage in Lyrae's voice. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "You don't have to face this alone." Lyrae's sorrow became resolve, her spine straightening, eyes sharpening with new purpose. "We're going back," she said, voice iron. "My people need the truth." "They'll be waiting for us," Marcus warned, his gaze flicking to Sira, then back to Lyrae. "Garen will have the camp locked down. He'll know we're coming." Lyrae's lips curled into a fierce smile. "Let them wait. You showed me the truth, Marcus. Now help me show my people." He nodded, something like pride swelling in his chest. We'll do this together, for Sira, for Kail, for everyone lost to the lie. That night, they prepared. Marcus restored the relay's power, copying the damning logs onto a battered comstick. Lyrae checked her blade, eyes storm bright. Sira watched, the pink scar on her leg a living reminder of all that had changed. They returned on the eve of the clan's succession, slipping through tangled scrub beneath a sky bruised purple with twilight. The Virenth camp was a fortress, banners bearing Garen's crest flapping from every post, warriors on edge, the air thick with the tension of impending violence. They found a handful of loyalists, old friends of Lyrae, warriors who remembered Kael's kindness and doubted Garen's rise. Tradition demanded that any exile could seek audience during the succession, that no blood be shed until the rite was done. It was a fragile shield, but all they had. At the camp's center, a pyre towered, a monstrous thing of bone and wood, ringed by chanting priests. It was built for Sira, for her purification. Marcus's stomach twisted at the sight. They moved through the camp in the old ways, heads bowed, cloaks pulled tight, blending into the eddying crowd. Sira's hand trembled in Lyrae's grasp, but her chin lifted in defiance. Marcus stayed close, the comm stick hidden in his sleeve, every sense tuned to danger. The succession rite began at dusk, drums booming, smoke curling into the sky. Garen stood before the fire, arms spread wide, his voice ringing out. Today we purify the clan. Today we banish the blood of traitors and the filth of outsiders. Today I claim the mantle of Chieftain. A roar went up. Fear and excitement mingled, a people desperate for certainty. Garen's eyes swept the crowd, searching for Lyrae, for any challenge. As he stepped toward the pyre, torch in hand, the crowd parted. Lyrae strode forward, purple hair wild, blade bared. Her voice carried over the drums, sharp as a blade's edge. I am Lyrae of the Verdant Oath, mate of Kael, mother of Sira. And I challenge you, Garen, traitor and murderer. A gasp rippled through the camp. The priests froze. The warriors pressed forward, hungry for spectacle. Tradition demanded the challenge be answered. Garen sneered, but there was fear in his eyes. You are exile. You are nothing. I am truth, Lyrae replied, stepping onto the dueling stone. Face me, if you dare. The sacred duel began. No armor, no interference, only blade and skill. Lyrae moved with a predator's grace, her strikes fueled by years of loss and love. Garen fought with brute strength, his blade hacking, but Lyrae was faster, every movement a memory of Kael, of Sira, of all she had lost. As steel clashed, Marcus moved to the comms tent, heart pounding. He hacked the broadcast feed, fingers flying, patching the relay's recording into every speaker, every comm link, every visor. Garen's voice echoed through the camp. Black Star package secured, payment confirmed, redirect to Garen, no coalition signatures detected. The crowd stilled, the truth washing over them in waves, Kael's death, the mercenaries, Garen's betrayal. Sira stood at the pyre's edge, head high, a living rebuke to the lie. Lyrae pressed the attack, blade flickering. She disarmed Garen with a twist, sending his weapons skittering across the stone. He dropped to his knees, pleading, but Lyrae's voice was cold as winter. You are banished, Garen. Let your name be ash. The warriors closed ranks, dragging Garen away. The pyre was doused. The priests fell silent. Lyrae stood before her people, no longer bound by grief, but by truth. She raised her blade, then lowered it, her voice steady and clear. This is Marcus Hale, my consort. He is not our enemy. He is proof that we can heal. Sira is my heir, a bridge between worlds and our hope for peace. Shock rippled through the clan, then slowly resistance faded. Warriors bowed their heads, some in awe, some in shame. Sira ran to her mother's side, Marcus beside her, the three forming a new axis for their fractured world. Later, as the camp quieted and the banners were stripped of Garen's mark, Lyra and Marcus sat together on a low bench near the fire. Syrah slept nearby, her breathing even, her scar a badge of survival. Lyra's hand rested on Marcus's knee, her thumb tracing lazy circles. The firelight danced over her features, softening the lines drawn by years of loss. Marcus looked at her, voice gentle. "Is this what you want?" She smiled, touching the faint scar at his neck, the mark her blade had made, the moment their fates first tangled. "The blood you gave my daughter made us whole," she whispered. He leaned forward, foreheads touching, breaths mingling. For a long, silent moment, they simply existed. No ghosts between them, only the promise of something new. Together, they accepted their beginning, the wounds of the past finally at rest. 5 years later, Kael's haven bustled with a life that would have seemed impossible in those first, harrowing days. The settlement sprawled across the gentle hills, stone terraces layered with green, virinth vines climbing beside human grains, blossom and fruit side by side. Wind chimes spun from alloy and bone caught the breeze, their music mingling with laughter, with shouts from the training circle, with the hum of a generator behind the clinic's glass and thatch walls. Here, the old war was a memory stitched into new beginnings. The clinic's doors bore both the red crescent and the virinth sigil of healing, and inside, Marcus worked miracles of gene therapy and nanite infusion, while the virinth healer brewed poultices and sang to the wounded. Out in the gardens, a human botanist taught virinth children how to graft apples onto the native blue root, and a former virinth raider coaxed human boys into leaping, laughing from rock to rock with animal grace. Syrah was the living bridge of it all. At 10, she was tall for her age, limbs long and strong, her hair a wild tumble of purple, her eyes clear and gray. She moved through the world with her mother's proud poise, but when she smiled, Marcus's dimple creased her cheek, and her stubborn jaw was his. Now she circled in the training ring, a wooden blade in each hand, facing two older virinth boys, her feet bare and sure on the packed earth. Lyra stood at the edge of the ring, one arm snug around Marcus's waist, her chin resting on his shoulder. Her fingers idly traced the curve of his hip, a touch so familiar it barely registered, yet grounding all the same. The heat of her body pressed against his back, her presence a constant, anchor and challenge, love and history, all wrapped up in one indomitable woman. "Watch her footwork," Marcus murmured, grinning as Syrah darted left, fainted, and spun out of reach of the taller boy's blade. Lyra's voice was a low purr in his ear. "She's too proud. She'll overcommit." "She gets that from you," Marcus shot back, eyes twinkling. "She gets her lack of discipline from you," Lyra replied, lips quirking. "And that awful joke about the two botanists in a hovercraft, corrupting her sense of humor, unforgivable." Marcus chuckled, leaning back into her. "You love my jokes." "I tolerate them, for the sake of peace." He turned his head, catching her gaze, warm, amused, but with a line of tension beneath. Even here, with the sun warm and their child laughing, old shadows lingered. A cluster of virinth elders watched from beneath a sunshade, their faces stony. Vesh, the oldest and sharpest-tongued, muttered to the others, eyes fixed on Syrah. There was pride there, but also suspicion, a wariness that 5 years of peace had not erased. Syrah slipped, caught herself, and sprang forward, her blade tapping her opponent's shoulder. A cheer went up from a group of human children, and Lyra clapped, a fierce pride lighting her face. Marcus grinned, feeling the old ache in his chest, wonder and fear and love, all tangled together. But beneath it, tension simmered. The old guard had never fully accepted the changes Marcus brought. Antiseptic in the ritual baths, alloy splints instead of willow bark, human drills in the defense circle. Vesh's voice carried through the courtyard, sharp and clear. Too many human tricks, he grumbled. Too much softness. The child. She is not fully Virenth. That blood will out, mark me. Lyra straightened, her arm tightening around Marcus. Ignore him, she whispered, though her eyes flashed. Marcus squeezed her hand. He's just afraid. He'll see. Before he could say more, a runner appeared. A boy, breathless, his tunic streaked with dust. Chieftain Leary, the council is called. Vesh demands audience. Now. Leary's jaw set. Of course he does. She turned to Marcus, her eyes softening. Come with me. This is your fight, too. They walked through the settlement together, the path lined with sunflowers and Virenth thorn bloom, children's laughter echoing behind them. The council chamber was a circle of standing stones, worn smooth by years of debate and blood oaths. The elders waited, Vesh at their head, his staff planted firmly in the soil. Vesh wasted no time. We honor the oath, but the balance tips too far, he intoned. This settlement grows fat on human tricks. Nanites in the healing tent, engines in the fields, and the child, her blood is tainted. What say you, Chieftain? Leari met his gaze, unflinching. I say strength lies not in purity, but in survival. Marcus's knowledge has saved lives, Virenth and human alike. The child is not tainted. She is proof that we can become more. Another elder, a woman with silver tattoos on her cheeks, frowned. But the old ways. Larry lifted her chin. We keep what is good. We let go of what is not. True strength is in adapting. The human has taught us this. Vesh's lip curled. Easy words. What happens when the next ship lands? When the next war comes? Will you let our ways be erased? Marcus stepped forward, voice calm but firm. I don't want to erase anything. I want to build, together. Your healers saved my life. Your warriors saved my daughters. This isn't about conquest. It's about family. Before the elders could answer, another runner burst into the circle, eyes wild. Chieftain, a ship, Alliance colors, approaches from orbit. They request permission to land. The council erupted into anxious murmurs. Vesh's eyes narrowed. You see? Already they come. Will you invite more trouble? Leary's voice rang out, clear and steel-edged. We will grant permission. She turned to the gathered elders, her voice gaining force. We have nothing to hide. We have nothing to fear. Let them see what we have built, Virenth and human, together. We will teach our children peace, but do not forget we know how to fight. If any come with war in their hearts, they will find we have not forgotten our strength. Her words hung in the air, a challenge and a promise. Even Vesh, for a moment, bowed his head in grudging respect. The council dispersed, some in silent approval, others grumbling, but none willing to challenge Lyra openly. As the elders filed away, Marcus lingered at her side, the weight of past and future pressing in. Lyra slid her hand into his, fingers lacing tight, her grip strong and sure. Marcus looked down at her, heart full. She smiled, a private smile just for him. We are ready, she murmured, for whatever comes. He squeezed her hand, and together they watched the sun slide lower, casting Kyle's haven in gold. A place born of war, now a beacon for something better, as the past and future converged in the promise of their joined hands. The Alliance shuttle landed with the precision of a blade drawn for parley, its hull sleek and gleaming against the rough-cut landing pad. It dwarfed the Virenth Watchers, its engines whispering a language of power and distant worlds. The air crackled with anticipation as the ramp lowered, and Ambassador Dana Kessler strode out, her uniform crisp, flanked by 2 guards in blue and silver armor. The villagers of Kael's Haven clustered at a respectful distance, some curious, others wary, the memory of old wars never far from any heart. Marcus waited beside Lyra, his stance relaxed but every muscle alert. He recognized Dana instantly, her sharp gaze, the set of her jaw unchanged by the years. She swept the crowd and halted, eyes widening as they fell upon him. For a breath, her mask slipped. "Marcus Hale?" she breathed, astonished. He inclined his head. "Ambassador!" Her eyes flicked to Lyrae, then Syrah and back. "I thought you were dead. The report said—" "They were wrong," Marcus replied evenly. "I found something worth living for." Lyrae stepped forward, chin high, her arms sliding around Marcus's waist. "He is my consort. He lives under my protection and by my side. Kael's Haven is our home." A ripple of unease passed through the gathered Alliance guards. Dana's posture stiffened, her diplomatic calm returning. "We have much to discuss." The words were civil, but the undertone was caution, almost accusation. Tension thickened the air. Human visitors eyed Marcus as a traitor, a rogue gone native. The Virenth elders, clustered near the council fire, saw only further proof of corruption. Vesh watched with narrowed eyes, his fingers white on his staff. The diplomatic feast was a test of nerves as much as hospitality. Dishes from both worlds lined the tables, roasted root and synth grain, delicate blue fruit beside spiced bread, Virenth nectar shared in glass cups. Dana and her officers tried everything with polite curiosity, but conversation skated on the edge of challenge. "Your settlement thrives," Dana said, voice cool as she set down her cup. "We did not expect such integration." "It is not always easy," Marcus admitted, "but it is real." Lyrae nodded, her tone calm but implacable. "Our strength is in what we have built together. My people have learned, Ambassador, sometimes from pain, but always from truth." Vesh's smile was a razor. "And yet some lessons are dangerous. Some blood cannot be cleansed." Marcus's hand found Lyrae's beneath the table, squeezing gently. Lyrae's gaze swept the table, landing on Dana. "We do not fear change. We fear those who cling to the old wounds." Dana studied Syrah, who sat between her parents, silent but watchful. "And the child?" "My daughter," Lyrae said. "A child of both worlds." The air crackled with things unspoken. The following day, in keeping with tradition and diplomacy, the Virenth staged a ritual hunt, a display of skill and courage meant to honor guests and ancestors alike. The gathered crowd circled the arena, elders on one side, human envoys on the other. Syrah, tall and poised, entered the ring, her wooden training blade at her side. Her gaze met Lyrae's, then Marcus's, and she nodded once, a signal as old as family. The beast was brought forth, a nightmaw, colossal and terrifying, its armor obsidian black, plates overlapping like the petals of a midnight flower. Its jaws yawned wide, lined with teeth that glowed from within, each one the length of Marcus's forearm. Dead black eyes swept the crowd, and beneath its skin, a pulsing heat shimmered, as if it were lit by an inner fire. The crowd recoiled. Even some of the Alliance guards stepped back. Lyrae's face was a mask, but her hand clutched Marcus's arm, holding him in place. "Trust her," she whispered. "She is ready." Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. "She's still just a child." Lyrae shook her head, fierce and proud. "She is Syrah. She is ours." The Nightmaw charged. Syrah darted aside, moving with a fluid, impossible grace. The beast's jaws snapped shut on empty air. She rolled, sprang to her feet, and faced it again. Sweat gleamed on her brow, but she stood tall. The Nightmaw lunged, catching her arm in its jaws for a heartbeat before she twisted free. Blood welled, bright against her skin. The crowd gasped. Vesh's lips curled in satisfaction. Marcus surged forward, but Lyrae's grip was iron. Syrah stilled. She knelt, pressing a trembling hand to her chest. For a moment all was silent. Then, beneath her palm, a silver light flared, soft at first, then blinding. It pulsed outward, knitting flesh, sealing wounds. When she stood, Not even a scar remained. A hush fell. The Virinth elders gaped. Dana rose from her seat, stunned. Syrah faced the Night Maw, her voice carrying across the arena. It only attacks because it is afraid. It does not deserve to die for what it is. Nor do I. A wave of realization swept the onlookers. The humans saw a miracle, a fusion of science and spirit, nanite and will. The Virinth saw a leader, something new and wholly their own. Lyrae released Marcus, her face shining with tears and pride. Together they stepped into the ring, flanking Syrah. Lyrae drew her daughter close. Marcus rested a hand on her shoulder. The image was indelible, a family forged from war, now united before two worlds. A murmur rose from the crowd, first uncertain, then swelling into cheers. Only Vesh remained unmoved. He tried to shout, to stoke old fears, but his words fell flat. The truth was plain for all to see. Later, as dusk settled, the council met to ratify the treaty. Vesh's plot, an attempt to provoke failure and division, was laid bare. The elders found no mercy in Lyrae's eyes. With a single word, she banished him. Vesh left alone, his staff trailing a bitter line in the dust. The treaty was signed that night, hands from both worlds pressed to parchment, the ink shining beneath lantern light. There was no talk of conquest or purity, only of wonder, and the promise to learn from what was strange. When the Alliance shuttle departed, engines flaring against the night, Kyle's haven glowed with new hope. Lyrae and Marcus stood beneath the vast alien sky, stars scattered like secrets across the dark. "They'll return," Marcus said, watching the shuttle vanish into the black. Lyrae's head rested on his shoulder. "Let them." Her voice was quiet steel. "Syrah will teach them more than their instruments ever could." She turned to him, hands rising to cradle his neck. "You've given me more than a daughter, Marcus Hale. You've given my people a future. You've given me back my heart." He drew her close, their foreheads touching, the warmth of her breath mingling with his. In that silent embrace, all the pain and joy, the blood and hope, lived between them. Beneath the stars, they held each other, a human and a Virinth, no longer divided by old wounds, but united by the blood they had freely given, and the love that had remade their world.